amazing. Every word she says about Barack Obama is negative. I can't think of her sitting there just waxing poetic about him, complimenting, he's brilliant, he's a great dad, he was the greatest president, whatever a normal wife of Barack Obama would say. Every time she opines, it's something that reflects poorly on him, how he's insensitive, how he's not a talker, how he doesn't know how to relate to people, he doesn't keep the same schedule as she does, and now we're talking about you can have a bad...
Megyn Kelly didn't merely criticize Michelle Obama. She tore into the carefully polished image that for years had been elevated to near sacred status. In a merciless dismantling, she peeled away the glossy magazine spreads, the scripted, non-threatening speeches, and the billionaire lifestyle disguised under the mask of everyday relatability. Every rehearsed story, every meticulously arranged smile was unveiled as nothing more than strategic brand engineering. This wasn't admiration or mild disagreement. It was an unforgiving assault that shattered Michelle's seemingly untouchable aura and left her meticulously constructed public identity dangling by a fragile thread.
Still just as bitter as ever. There's such a great new spin of complaints here. Here's one from her most recent episode, which still on YouTube, she's got like 200,000 subscribers. It's really amazing that now she's been doing this for how many episodes? She's been literally on every podcast of the left wing promoting it. And that's still all she's managed to get.
Michelle Obama has long been elevated by the media as if she were a member of political royalty, a modern-day symbol whose every gesture is greeted with applause, no matter how choreographed, scripted, or self-serving it might appear. Yet Megyn Kelly entered the conversation with absolutely no tolerance for the theatrics. This was never going to be the standard soft focus adoration or the neatly packaged fluff pieces. Kelly ripped away the glossy magazine spreads and the Instagram polished sound bites to expose the unfiltered reality. And that reality was far from flattering.
On a podcast called Diary of a CEO. It's kind of rings a bell like a founder kind of situation. And once again, wants you to know how awful it is to be married with children.
Just many natural reasons why marriage, infertility, trying to have kids makes things difficult. It's like I try to tell couples, of course it's hard. Just listen to what I said.
For years, Michelle has been carefully packaged as the ultimate down-to-earth public figure, the woman who supposedly embodies the everyday struggles of ordinary Americans. But Megyn Kelly wasn't buying a single piece of that narrative. How relatable can someone truly be when she has spent the majority of her adult life orbiting exclusive circles, retreating to private resorts, and dining at tables filled with billionaires? The closest thing to a struggle Michelle seems to recognize is deciding whether the Gulfstream jet or the luxury yacht offers the better lighting for her next carefully staged photo opportunity.
Here she is interviewing Dr. Sharon Malone, perhaps better known as former Attorney General Eric Holder's wife. And therein lies the problem, as these two ladies married to two very famous men are pissed that they are not the alpha in terms of popularity and recognition.
Megyn Kelly then tugged at the loose thread of Michelle's so-called activism, the variety that shines brightly in headlines but quickly dissolves into nothing of real substance once the cameras stop rolling. Take the Let's Move initiative, for example, a glossy, PAR-approved fitness campaign that devolved into layers of bureaucratic red tape, an inspiring cafeteria menu students despised, and a self-congratulatory victory lap that conveniently sidestepped the deeper systemic issues. Kelly presented it as the perfect snapshot of Michelle's public career, sweeping symbolic gestures with negligible impact, all repackaged and paraded as if they were groundbreaking achievements.
It's probably, if you're having some issues in your marriage, it's not you, it's the process of marriage. It's just all hard, because guess what happens when it all works out right? You know what you end up with? Babies. Little people with their own sense of everything. They mess you up. You love them dearly, but they're a hassle.
What? I mean, there's something wrong with this person. Like, she's seriously depressed. She has the most negative, dark outlook on life I've ever heard from a public figure. Certainly one who's been given so much.
Then came the publishing empire. Michelle's memoir was marketed as a raw and unfiltered window into her personal journey. But Megyn Kelly dismantled it as nothing more than a meticulously engineered branding exercise, crafted with the precision of a high-powered corporate marketing machine. Every so-called revelation felt strategically selected, every anecdote polished until it could easily double as a bite-sized motivational Pinterest quote. And the press devoured it not because it unearthed anything truly revealing, but because Michelle's public image has been elevated to the level of a sacred relic, one that journalists and commentators alike hesitate to ever challenge.
Now, Barack's come in, he's come out, and he's like, y'all still talking? He'll sit down for 5 minutes, be like, how are the boys? And the flip side of my husband, right? Because he golfs. And golfing takes as long as the first session of our, it takes 5 hours to golf. He'll golf with his buddies, come back, and be like, how's X? He's good. It's like, what'd y'all talk about? No.
Okay. So can I just say, she stole that from a comedian who's all over Instagram. That little bit is all over Instagram. Forgive me, I can't remember the guy's name, but he does this whole bit about how he goes golfing with a guy whose wife just died, and he comes home, and the wife's like, how's he doing? Fine. Well, how would you?
Megyn Kelly tightened the screws on what she saw as blatant hypocrisy. Michelle has spoken endlessly about humility, public service, and personal sacrifice. Yet the reality of her post-White House career reads more like a billionaire's vision. Bored, multi-million-dollar speaking engagements, lucrative Netflix contracts, sold-out stadium tours, all while presenting herself as a champion of the struggling middle class. Kelly didn't merely call it contradictory. She branded it downright insulting. And then came the quiet, carefully measured political shadow play. Michelle insists she has no desire to run for office, yet every calculated step she takes keeps her firmly planted in the national political conversation. In truth, Kelly argued, Michelle's career has never been about dismantling the elite structures she criticizes, but about protecting them and amplifying her own role within them. For all the soaring rhetoric about empowering the powerless, her greatest accomplishment has been empowering her own brand. The designer fashion spreads, the glittering gala appearances, the meticulously curated social media presence, its political celebrity culture wrapped in the costume of moral leadership.
Obama, listen to this.
And at this phase of my life, I'm in therapy right now because I'm transitioning. I'm 60 years old. I've finished a really hard thing in my life with my family intact. I'm an empty nester. My girls are in, they've been launched. And now for the first time, as I've said before, every choice that I'm making is completely mine. I now don't have the excuse of, well, my kids need this or my husband needs that or the country needs that. So how do I think about this next phase?
Once again, speaking a reference to her time as First Lady negatively, and I'm transitioning. I mean, an interesting choice of words, given how the internet refers to her.
Then Megyn Kelly zeroed in on the cultural pedestal Michelle has been carefully placed upon. She is treated as if she exists beyond criticism, as though questioning her image amounts to an act of hostility or bad faith. But Kelly flatly refused to participate in that illusion. She argued that Michelle's so-called untouchable status is exactly why tougher scrutiny is essential. Power without accountability, Kelly warned, is always dangerous even when it comes dressed in charm, charisma, and photogenic smiles. Kelly went after the speeches too. Michelle's addresses are routinely celebrated as moving and inspirational. Yet, strip away the carefully timed pauses, the rehearsed hand gestures, and the emotional cadence, and what remains is a string of platitudes that could just as easily have been lifted from a generic graduation card. She has mastered the art of speaking endlessly without ever saying anything truly risky. To Kelly, Michelle is not merely a public figure, she is an entire product line. The cookbooks, the documentaries, the branded merchandise, the relentless marketing of her own name. It is personality packaged and commodified on a scale that rivals international pop stars. And with every dollar added to her empire, the narrative of being a voice for the people becomes increasingly hollow and harder for anyone to take seriously.
He was laughing, he was yelling down to a buddy down below. They were joking, he was smiling. He was covered in dirt, to your, your life motto. And I thought, look at this guy in this dark, dank, smelly, dirty place with lots of danger. Not just this cherry picker, but also the live rail that he's working on, all the wires, having a great time. And then you look at her, and she's still, they have to be billionaires by now.
Sure.
Out on the yachts, the Martha's Vineyard $22 million estate, totally thriving young daughters who went to Harvard and USC. It's never going to be good enough. It's a mind frame, right? It's like your choice of how you're going to go through this life.
Megyn Kelly didn't stop at Michelle's carefully cultivated personal image. She set her sights on the Obamas as a whole of family that has transformed the post-presidency years into a sprawling gold mine. The notion that they are now simply private citizens, Kelly argued, is laughable. They operate more like a dynasty in waiting, keeping their political networks warm, their influence razor sharp, and their brand endlessly profitable. At the center of that empire is Michelle, the face, the magnet, the one who can sell an idea, a movement, or even a product with nothing more than a smile. The most cutting strike came when Kelly turned her attention to the fawning media coverage. In the press, Michelle is portrayed as incapable of misstep. Every outfit is framed as a statement. Every Instagram caption is hailed as a mic drop. Every public appearance is packaged as a historic moment. Kelly ripped apart that fantasy by highlighting the blatant double standard. Anyone else with Michelle's level of privilege, wealth, and elite access would be dissected mercilessly. Instead, she's shielded by reverence. To Kelly, the image wasn't that of an inspirational leader rising above the fray, but of a savvy operator who knows exactly how to maneuver within the system while persuading the public she's just like them.
I think that's a very unhealthy position to take, or to advise other people to gut it out for 10 years of misery. I mean, first of all, what that would do to you physically alone, I would never want to sign up for that. And secondly, does she not realize that by talking shit about her partner of decades, first Black president of the United States, she's talking shit about herself? Lady, you chose
Kelly didn't just target Michelle's career. She went after the very culture that made her untouchable. She exposed how celebrity worship has seeped into politics, transforming elected officials and their families into lifestyle brands shielded from genuine scrutiny. And in Kelly's telling, Michelle Obama wasn't simply participating in that trend, she had become one of its most polished, profitable faces. Michelle moves through the public stage with the poise of someone who knows. The cameras will always capture her best angle, and the headlines will always bend over backward to portray her as flawless. Kelly swung at that carefully curated aura like a wrecking ball, insisting that Michelle's so-called authenticity isn't organic at all. It's the product of years of deliberate image engineering. Every spontaneous laugh, every casual photo op, every seemingly off-the-cuff remark has been rehearsed, filtered, and perfected to guarantee maximum adoration. This isn't natural charisma. Kelly argued it's brand management dressed up with a smile, and she drove the point home. Michelle's reputation for grace under pressure exists only because she operates with the ultimate safety net. She doesn't appear bulletproof because she's never stumbled. She appears bulletproof because the media refuses to ever let the public see her stumble.
Here's the first one about how difficult it is for Black women like Michelle to articulate their pain.
We grew up with women who weren't voicing the pain and the burden. They made it look easy. And when you make stuff look easy, people assume that you must like this.
Yeah.
It's okay with you, right?
Right.
You know, we don't articulate as Black women our pain because it's almost like nobody ever gave us permission to do that.
And does anyone care?
Yeah, there's
Will
that.
they care?
If
that
we
part.
knew, I think we would care. If we
Kelly
knew,
made it clear this wasn't just a matter of preferential treatment, it was a protective shield. A shield that allowed Michelle to float comfortably above the political fray while still dipping her toes into whichever cultural or political debate she found convenient. Kelly called it selective engagement, speak just enough to maintain influence, but never so much that you risk real backlash. Then Kelly went further, zeroing in on Michelle's ability to play a dual-role cultural icon and political spouse, switching between them seamlessly whenever the moment demanded it. The hypocrisy, Kelly argued, became even sharper when the conversation turned to Michelle's extravagant lifestyle, a reality that's constantly downplayed in favor of her relatable branding for someone marketed as a voice for working families. Michelle's day-to-day existence looks far more like the pages of a glossy luxury magazine. Designer wardrobes, sprawling multi-million-dollar estates, exotic vacations in private resorts. The gap between her lived experience and the lives of the people she claims to represent, Kelly said, isn't measured in miles, it's measured in private jet flight hours. She skewered the very idea that someone can credibly champion the struggles of everyday Americans while sipping champagne from the deck of a luxury yacht.
Knowing that there are divorce rumors and, she's not showing up for him, whether it's at the Jimmy Carter funeral or the Trump inauguration or the basketball game he just went to in LA, when visiting their daughters and then dinner with the daughters, was not there. Here she is talking about it. If it were me, I would say something nice about him. I would say, he's just so charming. It was meant to be. I knew he could heal the earth in the way he did. There was only one person who could do it, and it was my husband, Barack Obama, whatever. Then she gets on to talking a little bit about him personally, and this is how that sounded.
When a girlfriend comes to visit, it's usually like, you got to stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
so much time to come to in.
Kelly also tore into the emotional manipulation woven through Michelle's public speaking. She has perfected the art of lacing personal anecdotes with just enough vulnerability to draw an audience in, only to pivot seamlessly into moral lessons that conveniently align with her brand. Kelly labeled it sentimental scaffolding, carefully crafted stories that support a message without ever constructing anything substantive. It's undeniably effective, but it's also strategically safe. Michelle never ventures into the dangerous territory of hard solutions or controversial stances, because those would jeopardize the universal adoration she so carefully cultivates. Then came the Netflix deal, a multi-million-dollar arrangement promoted as a noble mission to highlight meaningful stories. In reality, Kelly argued, it positioned Michelle and her husband as entertainment moguls, wielding Hollywood-level influence. Kelly didn't let that slide, pointing out the staggering irony. Two people who spent years decrying corporate greed now stand as the very embodiment of elite corporate power. It wasn't about elevating untold stories, she claimed. It was about keeping a firm grip on the narrative, even while pretending to step away from politics, and the public admiration Michelle enjoys, Kelly emphasized, isn't rooted solely in her actions. It's also fueled by constant reflexive comparisons to her predecessors and successors. Michelle benefits from a nostalgia-driven political mythology that paints her White House years as a flawless golden era free of scandals, mistakes, or contradictions.
If we knew.
Or, yeah, and we have to ask ourselves, the men in our lives, is, why wait to be asked?
What do you mean?
It seems like what we go through is pretty obvious. I mean, maybe we're not complaining, but we're actually living life out.
This is the perfect soundbite after the discussion we just had about how the left looks at everything through this identity. You could say prism. You could also say prison, where she's talking about how women aren't allowed to articulate their pain, about how they just suck it up. They don't show that, as if men never do that. Men are known, aren't they, for articulating their pain? That's what you think of when you think of man, traditionally.
Kelly shredded that myth by reminding audiences that this nostalgia is carefully manufactured. Every administration has its share of controversies, but Michelle's image has been so meticulously curated that hers appear to have evaporated from memory. Kelly also targeted the powerful influence machine built around her. Michelle doesn't need to run for office to shape political and cultural conversations. She commands a loyal army of media outlets, influencers, and public figures, eager to amplify her every word. That isn't grassroots influence, Kelly argued. It's top-down messaging dressed up as inspiration. This, Kelly claimed, is how Michelle keeps her relevance razor-sharp without ever getting her hands dirty in the grind of actual legislation. Timing, too, plays a critical role. Michelle's most high-profile appearances always seem to land during pivotal political moments, election cycles, internal party battles, major legislative showdowns. Kelly stressed that this is no coincidence. Michelle knows exactly when to step into the spotlight and when to retreat, keeping her influence fresh without risking overexposure. And then there's the origin story. Michelle's rise is often told as a tale of humble beginnings leading to national prominence, which is true, but only to a point. Kelly reminded people that her trajectory was also powered by elite education, well-connected networks, and carefully cultivated alliances. The myth of relentless personal struggle, Kelly argued, ignores the reality that Michelle's ascent was graced by opportunities and relationships most Americans could never dream of accessing.